start that now. Come on in, sit wherever, man. It's no, there's no rhyme or reason. Sit wherever you like. We got the whole family here. My partner Amberly. We got our baby boy Sage. We got our both of our daughters here, 9 and 10 years old, and my sister and brother-in-law. They've been to festivals before, but never together. Sean and Alicia, first festival ever. Sam and his daughter, first festival ever. Fantastic. I'm just super pumped to have everyone here. So I'll do a little bit of a disclaimer before I start. I'm not like a master or teacher or like guru or anything of the information I'm sharing. It's just I believe these are like universal truths that exist within all of us. And if I can be anything, I want to be a reminder. A reminder of what's already written in your heart as far as right versus wrong and what is good and what is not good. They say the statue is always within the stone. So if I can just polish a mirror to hold up, that we all may see the statue inside the stone and bring that forth. That's how we establish freedom as a society, is if we all take responsibility, radical responsibility for our own actions, what we think, what we feel, and what we do. And we'll never have a free society if we don't take up our cross, as they might say in the Christian tradition. If we don't do our own work and come to understand and operate based on principles. Who here thinks that? Who here would prefer humanity be less free than it is today? Who here is perfectly happy with how free humanity is and doesn't think anything needs to change? Doesn't think we're happy with this. This is the status quo, and this is what we're cool with our children inheriting from us. Who would like to have a higher degree of freedom for our people? Samesies. Well, there are requirements for that. It's not just like we just wish and hope for it or sit in the lotus position for 12 hours a day and manifest it. There are requirements for manifesting that freedom. And while we can have all these different unique gifts and everyone has their own special qualities and gifts and characteristics and quirks that we should be proud of and celebrate and embrace, we have to be on the same page at least on one thing. And that one thing is principles. Understanding what principles are, and the word principle means first thing, or that which is to be considered before anything else is considered. So a lot of times, we've all believed lies and we've all been deceived in our days, and we can claim to be living a principled life, but a lot of times, known or unbeknownst to us, we are giving our beliefs and our thoughts and our energies and our actions don't reflect those principles that we think we're operating on. A big part of the work we do is around forgiveness, and what we talk about yesterday was Alchemy Through Forgiveness workshop, and it's about achieving. This is all about achieving individual freedom that we may achieve societal freedom, and forgiveness is a very potent force in doing that. Forgiving ourselves, forgiving others, recognizing what's a true moral transgression versus something that might have just hurt our feelings, and recognizing those things and understanding what is right versus wrong is very important. Being able to forgive and to raise our own vibration of sovereignty, and it's really important for us to have working definitions of the things written on this board if we are to manifest what we say we want. If you choose not to believe in the law of gravity, is the law of gravity going to give a fuck if you go step off a cliff? No. If you choose not to believe in the laws of thermodynamics, is the stovetop going to care if you touch it when it's turned on? It's going to burn you, right? The same with electromagnetism. If you bite an electric cord, the physical laws of creation don't care about our opinions or our beliefs. We are bound to them, always. They're immutable. We are always bound to them, and they operate at all places and times. And the same goes for universal laws of nature or moral laws of nature, in that, we have to meet certain requirements. We can choose not to believe in natural law, or it's been called karmic law, God's law, moral law, universal law, spiritual law, cause and effect, whatever you choose to call it. The laws are there and they're set into motion, and we are bound to them. So we have the choice to not believe in those laws or not recognize those laws. But if we have the free will to choose that, but we do not have the choice to escape the consequences of operating outside of those laws. So all the different symptoms and things that we don't like about this world are mostly causes. They're mostly just symptoms. They're not causal factors. They are effects. We don't like the endless wars, the patriarchal dominance, the financial slavery, the healthcare being kidnapped by pharma, governments being kidnapped by lobbyists. We don't like all those things, and we don't like the racism and all that stuff. Those are all underlying causal factors. I'm sorry. Those are all effects of one underlying causal factor. That one causal factor is humanity's ignorance of and operating in harmony with nature's laws, operating with these principles. And when we operate within these principles, we create order and true evolution of our species. We create freedom, right? We create true liberation. When we operate outside of nature's laws and try to swim against the tide, we create disorder and chaos and all the things we see around us today. So remember that we can kick and scream and fight about the symptoms all day long, but it's never going to cure the disease. We have to understand the underlying causal factor, and that is operating outside of moral principles or natural law. A million different words for the same thing. The truth written in your heart. So that's like a little bit of a disclaimer / introduction to what we're talking about today. I hope that when everyone leaves here, that they just have a simple one-word answer to the questions written on this poster. Because if you walk around the streets and ask 10 people these questions, most of them won't have a clue. You'll get a deer in headlights looking at you, and they won't understand what a right is. How are you ever supposed to realize your rights and or achieve freedom if you can't define a right or freedom? So that's one of the important things we want to talk about today is what is freedom, and as you can tell by the title of the workshop. Who wants to take a shot at or give their definition of freedom? There's many different ways to express freedom, but I think having a good one sentence elevator pitch or just a one sentence explanation of what freedom is really important for us to have as a principle. And I think when you hear my definition, I think that it's not going to be something that you've learned or I've just taught you. It's going to be pulled out from your heart. It's going to be brought from your heart to the surface, brought from the statue to the surface of the stone. Who can give me a solid definition for freedom, or wants to give a definition? And it's cool if you don't either.
So I'd say freedom is when someone has no control over you besides yourself.
Yeah. That's a good definition.
You're able to make your own decisions without coercion.
Mm-hmm.
And she can tell us for something how exactly.
Yeah, Zach, you want to come in, or you want to come in? Are you cool sitting out there? You can hear? Can everyone hear? Am I projecting my voice well enough? All right.
So I'd say freedom is when you have the choice to do as you please as long as you have positive outcomes.
Excellent. Those are both perfect definitions too. We're saying the same thing and using slightly different grammar. That's absolutely right. That's what freedom is. My one-word definition or one-sentence definition for freedom is the ability to exercise all of your rights unrestrained by fear of violence or coercion. So we've just said the same thing. No one's got control over you or is threatening you, and you're not living in a way where even if you're doing everything that you want and living the life you want, you're not being held in the state of duress where you will be punished if you don't do something that someone else is dictating or mandating for you. So, not just the freedom, like it's all kind of the same thing, but not just the freedom to do what we want without fear of punishment or coercion, but being free of the situation, or being free of duress, not being held in a state of duress. And duress is where, if you're not doing something that, if given the choice, you wouldn't do, that if you don't do that or fulfill that thing, you will get hurt. Someone will hurt you. And so that's, the ability to exercise all your rights unrestrained by fear of violence or coercion is my definition for freedom. And I think, does anyone disagree with that, or it like contradicts what you hold in your heart? Yeah, what's up?
Not contradictory, but I say like ego-based complete sense, because ego is around fear, whatever that system.
Yeah, right. So there's only two choices: absolute freedom or slavery. Slavery to your ego, slavery to your base desires, where you can't really do what you want to do because you're chasing something else. Slavery to somebody else's ego, or the will of some psychopath who wishes to control you. Those attempts at dominating others are all ego-based. You're right. That's fear-driven, egoic actions and behaviors. Threatening other people, carrying out violence against peaceful people. So yeah, that's absolutely right. If I asked you what a right is, we could spend eternity making a list of all the things that it's our right to do, right? And a lot of people say like the spiritual path, or the path to self-realization, or the path to reaching your highest expression is not about becoming someone new or doing something new. It's about unbecoming everything that you're not, and saying no, and stopping activities that aren't true, or that aren't the real you. So we could talk for, like I said, days about everything that it's your right. It's our right to be here right now. It's my right to sit in this chair, to have this drink, to do a naked cartwheel outside. Whatever, there's a million trillion things that are our rights, but we'll use what's called the apophatic approach, or coming to understand what something is by eliminating what it's not. So my one word, or my one sentence offering for what a right is any action that does not cause harm or initiate harm to another being. So those are your rights. There's no more thought that needs to be given to it. If it initiates harm to another sentient being, it is a wrongdoing. It is an objective transgression. And if it does not initiate harm to another being, then it's your right to do. That is what a right is. And it's so important for this to be a principle of our understanding. Does that mean that there aren't forces and people and institutions outside of your understanding acting on deception that will threaten you, or are threatening to harm you if you do exercise your rights? And that doesn't mean that, because there are definitely people, places, institutions, forces on the planet that obviously do harm us for, or do threaten us, or do will carry out violence against us for exercising some of our natural rights. So that's that definition of a right: an action that does not cause harm or not initiate harm. Self-defense. If I went up and started beating up Sean right now, does he have the right to defend himself? If I was verbally berating Sam right now, just in his ear over and over, doing a verbal assault, does he have the right to walk away or leave, or exercise self-defense and say, fuck off, don't stop saying that to me, right? Self-defense is one principle. So I say initiating harm, because if you cause harm to someone in true defense of yourself, that's not the initiation of violence. That's defensive force. Violence is the initiation of harm or force or aggression, and defense. We have to differentiate violence versus defensive force. So that's why it's not just, it's your right to defend yourself, but never to initiate harm or aggression to another person. What other questions we got written on here?
I was gonna say, I think it's interesting how when I think of like how to define a right, I always think about myself. Like, what about me and my rights, but like, and I can't define it. But then when you reverse it and say that it's actually just not harming someone else, it's like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense.
Right. Yeah. A right is really an action, and if that action does not initiate harm, then it's a right. And so yeah, it's hard to define the positive sense of what rights are because there's so many of them. You have the right to breathe air, but you do not have the right to initiate harm or aggression or force or fraud on your neighbor or anybody. That's a good point. Self-ownership. Is there anyone here who does not own themselves? Classic. Very good. Yeah. There's like some wild ideologies these days. Sometimes like especially with hardcore like these socialist, Marxist, communist type ideologies about how ownership in any form doesn't exist and can't happen. And yeah, we're all part of the same one, right? We're all borrowing these bodies, right? But we are the stewards of this body. This is I am responsible for maintaining my consciousness and my body, and so are all of you. And if you hear that argument about how ownership, you don't own your body, well, just ask the person to relinquish ownership of their body. Go ahead.
Somebody's gonna have ownership.
Yeah, right. So you can go ahead and relinquish ownership of your body. So we're all just going to slump over and lay here forever, right? Because you're making yourself get up, move, walk, bathe, eat, maybe bathe, but eat. So these are principles that we have to stand on. And this ties into spirituality. It can be a spiritual thing for you if you don't want it to be. It doesn't have to be, but I think along the path we'll come to see that it is a sacred commitment and it is a spiritual journey for us to truly understand and embody principles. So I link these a lot to, or I show the connection of these principles to the masculine and the feminine, the true sacred masculine and the true sacred feminine forces within us. The two principles that correlate to those are the feminine non-aggression principle. I will not initiate aggression towards anyone, and the masculine self-defense principle. I will not allow anyone to initiate aggression towards me or my neighbor, or the weak or the innocent. The self-defense principle extends to anybody who is a victim or who is peaceful and being coerced or threatened or hurt. So those two principles, we just like we can't achieve true sovereignty if we don't bring the masculine and feminine into a balance within ourselves. That expression has to carry out through our actions and exercising the non-aggression principle and the self-defense principle. So those are two important principles. Above all else, those are the two principles that if this world understood, every person in this world understood and acted to the T, or at least, no one's ever going to be perfect. I'm sure as hell not perfect, and then we're so far from it. But if we are conscious of these principles, aware of these principles, they're not buried deep within the stone, and they're actually at the surface of our actions and our behaviors. If everybody had that sacred commitment to upholding and honoring the non-aggression and self-defense principles on this planet, can you imagine? It would be heaven, overnight. Even in the Bible, I'm not like I don't ascribe to any religions. I think pretty much all religions are prisons of the mind. They're dogma and they trap your mind. But that doesn't mean there weren't great wise teachers that came before us. And even in the Bible, it says when the male becomes like the female and the female becomes like the male, then you'll enter the kingdom. So we can't bring forth that Eden or that heaven or that kingdom here on earth until we perform the alchemical marriage or the divine union of masculine and feminine forces within us and act accordingly. It's not just enough to bring it forth within us, but we must act accordingly. So that's why we gave Sage, my little boy there, it's why we gave him the middle name Solomon. Sol means sun, Mon means moon, Sol O Mon is sun and moon. That's the union of the masculine and feminine. The masculine sun and the feminine moon. That is the divine human. That's the human that's embodying the highest expression of goodness and righteousness within themselves, and bringing that into the world. Um, I can go on lots of tangents and stuff. If anybody has you know, questions, like comments, concerns, just don't hesitate. Like throw a hand up or shoot something at me. Um, so we talked about ownership, and any other questions about what freedom is, and does anyone disagree that? And it's totally okay. We're here for dialogue. This is we're family. So you know, does everyone see like that we must meet requirements, just like anything that has ever been done or ever been created or anything we ever want to do. There are requirements for doing that. And when we understand these principles, we stop kicking and screaming at all the symptoms of the world, and we stop being knocked around like a small boat on a stormy ocean. We stop being the effect of all the shitty experiences and the pressures and the chaos around us, and we step into the role of sovereignty, and we become the cause of our experience rather than the effect of all the chaos around us. It's what it's all about. It's becoming the cause of your life and the cause of your experience. It's establishing rulership over your own kingdom, the only kingdom that you have the right to rule. So if everyone feels good on that, we can move on to ideologies that destroy freedom. This is so important, and a lot of these things we've all encountered before. There are so many prevalent ideologies in this world that don't belong to us. We've been given beliefs, and our free will in those beliefs has been usurped through socially engineered mind control. It is no accident at all that we so many of us hold tightly to these divisive and misleading and deceptive ideologies. So we're going to dive into some of them, and some of them might be abrasive. Some of these things might be abrasive, and they might not. The ego doesn't want to hear these things. The ego wants to hear, "Oh no, I was right in believing that for sure. That's the truth." But don't take my word for it. Weigh it against your heart and see if if it holds true to you, or see if you've experienced it in life, and maybe something didn't feel right about that conversation you had with that person. So the first one I'll talk about is called moral relativism. Who knows what that is? Who's ever heard of that? I know you have.
That what may be moral to one person is not to another, or
Yeah, exactly. That morality, or right and wrong, it can be made up by man. That humanity gets to decide what's right and wrong. That if the legislators scribble it on paper, then it's right. Or if this culture embraces it, then it's right, and that we get to decide what right and wrong are. And if that's the case, then if that's the case, then you don't have the right to oppose anything. I can't speak out and say that the Holocaust was wrong, or that any form of genocide is wrong, because the people who carried it out deemed that it was right, deemed that it was moral and okay to do that. So it's all good. This is what the dominators of the world want you to think. They want you to believe, oh, it's all divine. Child sex trafficking is cool. It's all good, because the people who are doing it think that it's right. So if morality is relative, and there's no inherent objective truth about right and wrong written in our hearts and written in the fabric of creation, then all the things that we say we don't like, we don't have a right to bitch about them, because whoever's doing those things deems that it's right and says that it's okay for them to be doing it. So there's no point in this workshop. There's no point in speaking out against atrocities and injustices, because whoever's doing those things thinks that they're right, and that's not true. That's just not the case. And because so many people believe that, and hold that ideology true. That's why so many people turn away and look away and like, oh, it's, you know, they don't get pissed off about it. They don't get angry about it. And you don't want to squander your anger on useless shit, you know, but anger is a sacred gift and it is to be felt. And we'll talk more about this when we get into New Ageism here in a couple minutes. But don't ever be convinced that you're not supposed to feel anger, because you've got that human emotion for a reason, and it's one of your most precious gifts. I think it was Abe Lincoln who said, you can tell almost all you need to know about a man by what pisses him off or what makes him angry.
It's passion.
Yeah, right. If I'm like raging, kicking holes in my wall because my football team lost, or because some celebrity couple broke up, then you're squandering that sacred gift. But child sex trafficking happens and it pisses me off, and I'm supposed to be pissed off about it. If you're not, there's something broken, and that's exactly where they want us to be, is to be indifferent and apathetic about immoral things. So moral relativism is one of the most potent destroyers of freedom. Now there is such thing as subjective morality or subjective truth. There's such thing as your differing perceptions and perspectives on truths of the matter, but those things usually don't change, or they don't change the objective truth. I'll use an example of dark chocolate. Like if I let's say I love dark chocolate and Amberly does not like dark chocolate, it's really the other way around. So we'll switch it up. And the subjective truth about that situation, and this is, by the way, the solipsism is the word for this other ideology where people say there's no such thing as objective truth. Everything is just perception. Everything is just subjective, and that truth doesn't exist. There's no such thing as it. That's another prison of the mind. They want us to believe there is no truth, that there's no actual objective truth. And if I died tomorrow and my perception left this plane, you all would still be here. So you don't just exist because I perceive you. If I choose not to think about or give any attention or perceive that genocide's happening or sex trafficking is happening, it's still going on. Even if I look away, even if I choose not to perceive it, it's still happening. So that's garbage ideology. And if you hold that ideology and that makes you upset, that's okay. You weigh it against your heart to see how you truly feel about that, you know. But let's talk about this. Goes into the thing that, you know, the perception does exist and subjective truth also exists, but that doesn't negate the fact that there is also objective truth. They want you to think one way or the other, but it's both. If I don't like Amberly's subjective truth is that dark chocolate is fantastic. And my subjective truth, it might be that dark chocolate is shit. And those are both true, right? Those are both our perceptions, and those are both true statements, right? Dark chocolate's not good. Dark chocolate's great. Our subjective view on that and our subjective truth doesn't change the fact that dark chocolate exists. It's a mixture of sugar and cacao and other ingredients, and that some people like to eat it. You know, it doesn't change the objective truth of the matter. If we're standing on some grass and bare feet, and you know, you say the grass feels fantastic, I love, you know, this grass is great, and I say the grass feels shitty, the grass is not great. Well, that doesn't change the fact that the grass exists and it's there, and we're both standing on it, and it's made up of chlorophyll and plant cells and all these. There's a whole bunch of objective, actual, real truth about that, even if our perceptions and perspectives differ on it. So it's not just all perception. Perception has a lot to do with our level of freedom and where we want to go in our evolution, but that does not preclude there being objective truth. There is still objective truth. That's a really important one to remember. So solipsism is another ideology that destroys freedom. The belief that there's no such thing as truth.
Just a quick comment on that. I would say that probably plays a huge problem too with taking the good parts of certain religions and creating extremism out of them and turning something that should have been intended for good into something that's actually bad, but in their mind they think it's good.
Yeah, up to interpretations of religious texts, you know, perspectives and perceptions of religious texts. But those are all egoic things that we just want to cling to this and say, oh, that gives me an excuse to hurt these people, or that gives me an excuse to reject these people in my life. But those people have the ego in the passenger or in the driver's seat. The truth is only found when you put the ego and use it for the tool that it is, put it in the passenger seat to help you navigate, and your heart has to be at the wheel. That's where truth is found. Um, Dialectics, Hegelian dialectics, is another tool that dominators of the world use. They want us to cling to one extreme or another, one end or the other of a dialectic. The truth is almost always found in the center. Nature versus nurture. It is not one or the other. It's both. Right? It's both. Your nature. Yeah. No, go ahead.
It's like when they try to, like the creator of God versus science.
Right.
They're both the truth.
It's yeah.
They both exist.
It's both. They should be working together to really explore the science of the unseen.
So that's when you say like who owns you? Like in my opinion, it's kind of a combination of myself plus the higher being that made me.
Yeah.
Because the combination of
Yeah.
us together kind of like I wouldn't be here with just me.
We all
There's a higher power at present.
we all belong to that source, the source of creation. But we are in this plane that we've been given free will on to explore and to grow and to create and to fuck up and to learn from and to do all these things. We are the owners of our body in this realm, and that we will return back to that source or that divinity, whatever you choose to call it, at one time. But we've been gifted this body, you know. Oh yeah, it's both nature versus nurture. Your genetics have a lot to do with how you turn out, and your environment and how you're nurtured has a lot to do with how you turn out. It is not one or the other. People want to say it's one or the other, and it's because they want you stuck in one end of a dialectic, away from the center where the truth is. All sorts of different things. Religious fundamentalism versus complete atheism. Religions are made to make you do one of two things: cling so tightly to God that you think you're nothing more than a puppet dangling on a string, and you have no free will. Everything's determined by that force. You can throw your hands up and you don't got to worry about anything because except being on your knees and asking God if you're worthy every day. Or they want you to hate the church and reject the idea of a creator at all and go into full atheism. But so the full atheism is also called randomness, where you believe the universe is nothing more than a grand cosmic accident, and it's a mechanical clockwork universe that is run like a machine. That's called randomness. And then determinism is where you believe you're the puppet hanging from God's strings. It's both. There is a random component to our reality, and there is a deterministic component to our reality. The deterministic component is natural law, are the laws that bind us to the consequences of our actions. And the random component is free will, the will we've been given to introduce the random aspect of creation. What will we do? What will we choose? We have the free will to choose, but we are bound to the deterministic laws of cause and effect. So it's both. It's not full atheism. It's not full atheistic randomness, and it's not full religious fundamental determinism. It's both. So those are a couple examples of dialectics. Anytime you feel like you need to cling to one side or the other, look in the middle. Try to get to the middle, and you're really gonna, you're most often gonna find the truth there. And if you don't, or you don't perceive that you've found the truth there, oftentimes it's inner work that needs to be done, and letting go of a deceptive belief, a lie that you believe. And we've all believed lies. And the true path to any real knowledge starts with uttering the words, "I was wrong. That was wrong. I believed that lie, and I was wrong about it." And that's when you can let go of these extreme or these polar opposite of a dialectic and come to the center, and usually find the truth there. Hey,
Can I get money for food?
you hungry?
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah. You don't have any of that leftover money?
I gave it to Jane.
Oh, okay. Where's Jade at? She got some food too?
She's in the aerial silks.
Where's she at?
Aerial silks.
Okay.
I'm getting another baked potato.
The aerial field, yeah. Just hold on to the change, okay?
Okay.
Here's another ideology that destroys human freedom, and it's written on that sign. What is the most dangerous superstition? Anyone ever read that book by Larkin Rose? The Most Dangerous Superstition? Fucking required reading. Required reading. The audio book's on YouTube. You can get it free wherever, whatever. The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose. Fantastically worded, easy to read. It's a great book. The most dangerous superstition that exists on the planet today is the mythical belief in authority. The belief that one human being or any group of human beings has authority over or to tell another human being or group of human beings what to do, or to threaten them, or to say if they're not doing this, then this is going to hurt you. Now I want to differentiate intellectual authority from coercive authority, okay? If I'm building a rocket ship, the rocket engineer has intellectual authority over me, and I'm going to be asking him and consulting him on most of everything I do to build that rocket ship. But he does not have coercive authority over me to threaten me or to say that if I don't do this, he's going to hurt me or anything like that. So the worst atrocities ever carried out in the history of mankind have been due to the belief in authority. And Mao and Stalin and Hitler, they were just idiots, psychopaths with really fucking bad ideas that couldn't have done any harm themselves at all if it wasn't for the millions of people who hallucinated them to be authorities in their life, right? It was not Adolf Hitler himself or Mao themselves or Stalin who carried out these genocides or all the other genocides and all. It is all the people that hallucinate them to be authority and who went along with their plan against what was written in their heart. So the belief in authority, coercive authority, that any person has the right to tell you what you can and can't do. It's simple. If you and one other person are the only two people on an island, if it's wrong for you to do to that person, it's wrong for anybody to do to anybody, or any group of people to do to anybody at any point in space and time, anywhere in the universe. And so if you don't feel justified doing it to your neighbor, then you can't vote for someone to do it to your neighbor either. If you don't feel justified in doing it to your child or doing it to the other person on the stranded island that you're on, then it's not okay for anybody to do to anybody ever. That is the most important thing we got to take from this, is that you can't give somebody else a right that you don't have. Nobody else. You are born with all the natural rights you'll ever have, and you'll die with the very same rights, and every person on the planet, every sentient being in creation has those very same rights and will die with those same rights. So it doesn't matter if someone does a political ritual or a pseudo-religious ritual in an election process and gets sworn into a big giant church or White House or whatever. You can't give them a right that you don't have. If you don't feel justified in doing it to your neighbor, then you can't advocate anybody else do that to your neighbor or to you. And that's like that causes friction. That causes friction with our ego. We've been programmed so heavily to believe that other people have more rights than us, and that somebody with a blue or a red tie is allowed to threaten and rob my neighbor, but I can't do it. Or that somebody wearing a special uniform and a badge is allowed to kick down my friend's door and lock him in a cage because he has a plant, but I would never do that to him. Nobody has ever had that right. You cannot give someone that right. So that's important to remember. You cannot delegate or abdicate a right that you don't have, and you also cannot abdicate responsibility for your actions. If I tell someone I'll pay you $5,000 to kill this person, yes, I'm wrong and I receive some karma for doing that, but it's the one who carried out the action who receives the brunt of the karmic debt. It's the one who does the deed. So when the police say, "Oh, just following orders," or some fucking politician that I don't even know and I've never heard of scribbled it on paper, so I can threaten you and take your money, or I can lock you in a cage. You cannot give responsibility for your actions to somebody else. They are your own, and you did them, no matter what anyone else told you or what. And that's, we've all, the police, everybody, all of us have been subject to deception. We've all believed that we can do that, or that I can just say, no, I was just following orders. I just did what my boss told me. Well, if I got pulled over with 20 pounds of weed in my car and said, oh, I'm just transporting this and selling this weed because I work for this mob boss or this gang, and he told me that I could do it. He told me that I need to do it. Would I be given the same respect, or would I be given the same courtesy of not being taken to jail as when the police say, oh, but I'm just following orders, this is just what I have to do? So rights apply to everybody the same. It's when we run into trouble when we apply a different moral standard to, you know, authority figures than we apply to ourselves. We hold ourselves to this standard, but we hold other institutions and systems to this standard. It's okay if they do it because a bunch of people said they could. Well, if I was in our neighborhood and I came to Sean's house and said, hey bro, like 51% of us in this neighborhood voted, and they said I could come take your money, and if you resist, I'm gonna hurt you, and if you resist more, I might just kill you. So just give me this much of your income and we're gonna make it, it's gonna be cool. I can't do that. It doesn't matter who voted for it. It doesn't matter. I can't threaten you and take your money. So, going off on a little tangent there, running around, but I'm passionate about this stuff. What does everyone else think? Anybody got anything? I'm just like spitting up
I
here.
just want to say that you put it so simply, but it explains it perfectly. Most people don't think that.
Thank you.
They don't think that way.
They don't. We all don't. You know, 6 years ago, I lost friends. Campbell and I almost broke up as friends because I was defending the actions of the police in our wars of aggression overseas. I almost lost friends over clinging to my conservative beliefs and Republican beliefs, and oh, well, you shouldn't have broke the law. He got killed. They shot him 17 times when he reached in his pocket for a phone. He should have just laid down. You know, he should have, whatever it is. I was fighting with people defending the actions of others when in the first place they pulled the guy over because they smelled something funny or whatever it is. Turn signal was that. There's a million situations, but so we've all been deceived. We don't normally think about these things, you know, and that's by design. They want to keep us running on the hamster wheel, chasing everything else and not thinking about things that really matter, like morality and principles and what are you doing good for yourself and for others, you know. So, and I think that I'm not, you know, if I err in what I say, or if I'm saying something that doesn't sound true, I'm probably fucking up the delivery some way. But I think it sounds simple and it sounds well put, as you say, because it's just written in your heart. Like I'm not teaching anything. I'm just reminding you of you that you know what's right and wrong, and that we've all at times gone against what we knew was right, or gone against what we knew was right, and we usually learn a pretty hard lesson about it. And we either take the lesson from the experience or we will repeat the experience, you know, to all situations in life. So yeah, it's, I think that's the main thing, you know, is that you already know these things. Yeah, what's up, Dad?
Slowly over time, they take away,
Yeah. Yeah, we've voluntarily given it away, and that our free will has been usurped, and we've been subjugated to misinformation, disinformation, social engineering, mind control. Who knows the etymology of the word government?
Control mind.
Yeah, govern means to control. Govern comes from the Latin gubernare, which means to control. And what does mente, mental mean? mentality, mind. The word government means to control the mind. Government means mind control. And that pisses us off because we've been deceived for how many years before we knew that. I was
They hide the truth in plain sight because they have us that deceived.
They hide it.
So much invested technologically, bombard us daily on the news, on media, on our phones, everywhere. It's almost impossible for anyone to make a rational decision all the time.
Talk against it.
They've infiltrated every aspect of life. It's called social engineering. And many, many scientists and psychologists, especially Nazi scientists and psychologists, have written very detailed books about how they do it. You just have to look. It is written out, explained, perfected, and that brings me to another ideology that I want to talk about that destroys freedom. And this can contradict with us a lot too because we have the wrong idea about what it is. But you can't understand the source of the world's problems unless you understand the occult. Unless you understand the occult. Occulted knowledge, occult traditions. The word occult just means hidden. So the occult or occultism is the study of hidden knowledge. It's the hidden laws of nature. And when it's like a master psychologist whose wife cheated on him with a young student at the university. Well, that master psychologist could befriend that student, knows way more about how that student's mind works than the student does. He could do a number on that student psychologically, right? Well, the few controllers of the world have had understandings of this occult knowledge. They're basically ancient master psychologists. This information has been passed down through generations. They know way more about how our mind works than most of us do, and that's how they do this. That's how they engineer us into believing lies and acting accordingly. So Satanism. Satanism is really trendy. It's really trendy. A lot of people love to wear the inverted pentagram or the this and that, and like we have the wrong idea. I'm not talking about LaVeyan Satanism, where Anton LaVey wrote the Satanic Bible in 1962. I'm talking about the old religion. They don't even call it Satanism, the ones who practice it. And the people that I'm talking about, these ancient psychologists, these people who know this occulted information or this hidden information, look at the dollar bill. The occult symbolism is written on everywhere in plain sight. One of the rules that they play by to avoid all the karma, all the negative consequences, is they hide it in plain sight. When you see the dollar bill and it's got the pyramid on the back and the all-seeing eye of God in the capstone separated from the top of the pyramid, that means a few things. It means that they are up top and that we can never reach their level, and also that as long as we treat money, which in green language means one eye, mono, and then EY, one eye, the eye of God, the eye of the divine. As long as we see money as our God or treat money like our God and pursue money like we should be pursuing union with our source, then we'll never achieve that all-seeing eye. Well, that's why it's separated. The bottom of the pyramid represents the ignorant masses, the ones that chase the eye, the one eye, the paper bill, rather than pursuing their union with the divine. So this Satanism is not worshiping some pitchfork-holding lizard guy with a red, red skin and all that. Satanism exercises the inversion principle. It takes all that is good and right and just, and in every way possible, in every facet and from every direction, turns it on its head and tries to get people to operate accordingly. I can step on you, I can hurt you as long as I get ahead. Self-preservation is the highest law. Survival of the most ruthless. Whoever has the sharpest teeth wins. Social Darwinism. Ego above everything. And so that's what actual Satanism is. And 95% of this world are Satanists through action. They would never identify as satanic, but that is what they are through their action. And they don't know it because their free will has been subverted. They've been tricked into operating that way. What's up, Brad?
I was going to say, I think like Anton LaVey you're talking about, that was ingrained intentionally to be like, okay, that's Satan. Meanwhile, this is going on.
Oh yeah,
Control
yeah.
opposition.
Yep, and Anton LaVey was
Smoke.
smoke and mirrors. They put that there to give people this idea of what Satanism is. And there was the satanic panic in the 60s and 70s, where every Midwestern town, they knew there were people out there dancing in the woods, sacrificing animals and burning candles, and to turn people away from what real, true old religion is, true dark occultism is, because that power differential, represented by the pyramid being, the capstone being removed, that power differential is created through a knowledge differential. This occulted knowledge. They don't want us understanding natural law. They don't want us understanding these principles, how they work, and how we are to align with them if we want to truly be free from their control. And these are ideologies that erode freedom. These are things that destroy it. Who's got time? What kind of time we got? So we're a little bit over, but we started a little bit late. Another one that is just at Soundhaven this year at my workshop, I ran into a woman talking about this right before my workshop, and it gave me the courage to speak about it, because this is a touchy subject, and me being a male speaking about it in front of women was uncomfortable for me to talk about. Neo-feminism, the new wave of feminism, is nothing more than psychological castration of the planet. It is making men hate themselves and making women hate men. They want nothing more than to disrupt healthy relationships between men and women, strong family units. They divide by race, they divide by religion, by political ideology, but the closest one to a 50-50 divide, there's all these different religions, all these different races. The closest to 50-50 is the man-woman, the male-female bond, the unified bond. Now, feminism is fantastic. Classical feminism, where we're talking about true equality and true, equal playing field for all that stuff is very good. But we're talking about the new age feminism, where anytime a man tries to engage in a conversation with a woman, he is crucified. Especially if it has to do, and this isn't like everybody. I'm talking about like the radical new neo-feminists. I've been crucified by just, even things that don't just have to do with women or women's rights or women's bodies. I've been destroyed online and in person because I'm mansplaining. If I want to engage in a healthy dialogue with you, I'm immediately dismissed as mansplaining. And I've been told to kill myself over it. I've been told the most vicious things imaginable. And I'm not being aggressive or mean about anything. I'm just saying that, this is how I see it. Like, it's been bad. Or like, sometimes walking down the street, I've been body checked. People I know, Passio talks about this a bunch, where like, they'll be walking down the street and they'll make sure that they won't step aside at all, or you got to step aside first. And if you don't, they'll give you a serious body check. There's so many different ways to look at it, but there is an attack on sacred masculinity, and I'm not. That doesn't mean that there's not that we don't have a hyper masculine world. We haven't manifested a male dominator society. We haven't manifested those symptoms. This is not to say that. But this is to say there's this new wave of feminism, and there's also the same thing in men. Have you heard of men, MGTOW, men going their own way? There's also groups of radical malists or masculinists or whatever that have written off relationships with women, and there's like a group of them that basically have that same hatred for women that the neo-feminist movement has for men. So they want this divide along the lines of the sexes too. They don't want strong, healthy relationships between men and women. One example is some women, if a man displays any form of anger whatsoever, any bit of anger, it doesn't matter what he's angry about. If there's any bit of anger, she will not engage with him. There's no way, I won't have a relationship with him at all. So it's a psychological castration. These ideas are put into the mind, and men are, scared to get angry about true injustices or truly immoral things, because they won't be accepted by a counterpart in that. So this is I don't know it nearly as much about others who teach these things, about this neo-feminism, but just know that true equality is always supreme. That's what we always want. And there has been inequality along the sex lines, and there, we have gone too far with patriarchy and male dominance and things, and that needs to be corrected. But let's not overcorrect it to the point where men who are also struggling enough with their own fights and their own battles hate themselves even more, and that we need to love each other and not let hate drive our relationships or drive our lack thereof. So that's that's one more ideology is this new wave of feminism. Feminism, true classic feminism is excellent. It's been very uncomfortable for me to talk about that because I don't want to be mansplaining. I don't want to get crucified like I have in the past. But I think it's important to understand that there's a war on testosterone. Through our chemicals and our daily products, we have the male testosterone level. Testosterone is important in women too. We have to understand that that it's the action hormone, it's the will hormone, and that it's important in both sexes. And through the chemicals we're exposed to, the environment we're exposed to, the average male testosterone is half, 50% of what it was 40 or 50 years ago, and that's not by accident. Okay, this is not by accident. So it's psychological castration. They want everyone to be passive, and men not to feel any anger at all about child sex trafficking or government overreach or exploitation of whoever. We want it to all be passive. And then I think the last one I'll touch on is another religion that we've all heard of called New Age philosophy, New Age religion, and like every religion, there are important seeds of truth, and New Age has been called the last cul-de-sac before the gold mine. So yes, New Age is some of the truth that we can find in New Age teachings is that we are all one, we are all of this one consciousness or this one divine source, that our thoughts are really what we use to create our reality. Our thoughts are the starting point or the causal plane for everything we manifest. That meditation is good. There's a whole lot of good, important things in New Age religion, but where it becomes a mind prison is where they say you're not supposed to feel any anger. You're not ever supposed to feel anger. It should be purged and bypassed. And if you feel anger, you need to just purge it and let it go, and not let it, rather feel it, embrace it, let it drive you into right action. We can't only sit in the lotus position for 12 hours a day and end slavery, end the child sex trafficking, or all these different things we want to fix. There's a couple other things about New Ageism that I wanted to talk about, but I'm drawing a blank right now. Just remember that with every religion, there are seeds of truth scattered throughout, but there are also traps and pitfalls, and that we should collect the good and the truthfulness from those religions of what resonates with our heart, like a lot of the things we talked about today, the true principles of goodness and a dedication to good and righteousness, and leave the rest. Leave the rest, because they're all formulated as a mind prison. Just like Satanism, just like the new Satanism was devised to mislead people, New Age religion has been devised as another way to make people passive and to think that the blue avians or the gray aliens are coming to save us and we don't need to do anything. One other thing. Oh, yeah, there's so much of the solipsism in New Age. The idea that push hard the idea that there's no such thing as truth, and that everything's okay as it is, and we can just accept everything as divine. Yes, everything is part of the divine and made of the divine. That doesn't mean that a free will doesn't go awry and people truly get harmed, and we should not take a stand against those wrongdoings and transgressions. So it's just another way to make people passive, basically. I think that's about all I got. We've been going on for a while. Thanks so much for coming, guys. We can, if anyone wants to chat a little bit more, we can. I've got contact cards for the nonprofit organization we've got going. If anybody wants these, we do like one-on-one work with people. We'll do like come to events, do workshops, hold discussions, wedding officiating, plant medicine integration sessions, anything you want to talk about, and like it's all based in human freedom. So if anybody wants some cards or something, grab some and check us out. Thanks so much, gang.
Thank you, Chad. That was awesome.